Hi guys, my name is Nonema Tikela. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I want us to talk about the ballistic evidence. That's what we are going to talk about on this video. In fact, today's videos are going to be about the ballistic. Perhaps then we'll go back to Abu Kwabili stuff. But we need to, to keep the momentum going. Okay. Yeah, in every trial, there is a moment, a point where the entire narrative shifts, where the entire narrative shifts, where the prosecution's confidence cracks and the defense senses blood in the water. Zonke cases banjalo, siyayalondoley, right? In the sense of Meyiwa trial, that moment arrived not with the witness, not with the confession, but with the bullets. Do you remember the bullet situation that was discovered a day later after the incident? Yes, we're going to talk about that. A bullet that, according to the defense, never fired from the gun the state saw it came from. So today we dissect the forensic collapse that the state never saw coming. A collapse triggered by a single silent piece of metal. But the bullet that should have ended the trial, but instead exposed how fragile the state's entire case really is. It always have been fragile, guys. Yabo, it has always been fragile. The bullet that will decide fate for the case, yes, that one. Yes, you got that right. Yes, that one. When the state presented its ballistic evidence, it treated the bullet as a holy artifact. This, they argued, made the projectile do the work, do the holy work. Do you understand? This, they argued, was the projectile that tore through Senzo Meyiwa. This was the key to linking accused number 3 to the murder. This was the scientific anchor of their entire theory. But the defense noticed something small, a detail almost invisible, a microscopic inconsistency that will grow into a catastrophic forensic earthquake. We saw a beautiful lie presented in court, a lie of a forensic certainty. Do you understand this? We were listening, and Umnube was like, I'm not about to go down for something that I did not do. I may be many things, but Senzo Meyiwa, I did not touch that man. I was never there. Ballistic is supposed to be the most objective part of a criminal case. Metal versus metal. Marks etched into history by spiraling barrel of a gun. Except the bullet in this case did not behave like the state insisted it should. The defense cross-examination revealed a lot. Let's go to what exactly was revealed by the cross-examination of the defense. No direct match conclusively tying the bullet to the firearm allegedly found. Contradictions in the state's expert testimony. Missing chain of custody clarity on who handled the bullet, when and how. And above all, a scientific dead end where the state secretly hoped for certainty. The objective science cracked under pressure, revealing the truth. The bullet may not have come from the gun the state pinned on accused number 3. That is what was shown through cross-examination. And then the defense ignites the exclusive. They further went on. Then came the moment the courtroom shifted. The defense asked questions the state never prepared for. If this bullet did not come from the gun, what evidence do you have left? And then Umangena didn't know what to do. A silence so heavy that he brought forward, it felt like the walls were absorbing it. This wasn't just a contradiction, this was an implosion. The forensic foundation, the backbone of the prosecution, didn't just wobble, it turned into dust, just like that. Just like that, Mangena was dealt with. And the state case was never ready for any of that, right? For months, the prosecution built a narrative around a gun, a bullet, shooting, a reconstruction, a chain of custody, and an expert who would close the gap. Do you understand? But the defense showed that the gap wasn't just wide, it was unbridgeable. What remained was not forensic proof, but forensic speculation. The state suddenly found itself trying to defend the indefensible. Because what is this? What is this? A bullet with no reliable origin, a gun with no ballistic confirmation, and an expert whose certainty evaporated under pressure. And the consequences of all of that, it was a trial in free fall. If the bullet does not link the gun and the gun does not link the accused, then the entire forensic branch of the state's case collapses completely. This isn't a small oversight. This is a nuclear level damage. The motive becomes irrelevant. The alleged sequence of events becomes unsupported. The credibility of investigators collapses. The accused gain immense reasonable doubt, and the court is left staring at scientific void, a void created by the bullet that never fired. This is the same bullet that they are forcing down the throat of accused number 3. And he's like, listen, when I got arrested for the case of Alexander Cleveland, I was taken to Cleveland police station. And when the gun was tested, the Senzo Meyiwa case was number 1 on the list of cases that are supposed to be tested. There was a list of them. I don't know whether it was 10, 12, what, but it was a lot that was read there. The one thing that Umangena did, he had the page, and then Umangena did not read the page, the first case number. He did not read that. All to find out who accused number 3 was given the same page that Umangena has from 2015. And he exposed him right there in court in real time. Uguti, no, I do have that page that you have. The case starts with this case, 636. You can't come now and be starting to the second one. You need to read from the first up until the end. You read all others except this one. This case was part of the cases that were tested against that firearm, and it did not match anything, any of them. So how come now when it's you who is doing the testing, now it comes out as if it matches? Something is very wrong there. That was when they went to ask for a ballistic expert for number 3, his own now. And he came, as much as he has not yet come to give full evidence on it, but according to the bits and pieces of the evidence that he was like, no, it did not match. It did not match. It's not the one. It is absolutely not the one. So a trial doesn't fall apart all at once. It breaks at the weakest point. And in the Senzo Meyiwa case, the weakest point wasn't a witness, wasn't a confession, wasn't an alibi. It was a bullet that exposed the cracks in the state's methods, their assumptions, their forensic shortcuts, and ultimately the fragility of their entire case. This is not just a mistake. This is a forensic disaster, a turning point so monumental that legal analysts may study it for years. Because when science fails, narratives collapse, cases die, and justice, no matter who it serves, must confront the truth. You cannot build a conviction on a bullet that never fired. That one is a fact. They can't do that. Even if they want to try, they can't come from Mube when it comes to this one. So, Yabona, when that firearm situation came and they were waiting for Mangena to come and check it out, and the courtroom, when the truth doesn't whisper, there is nothing that they can do. The truth is not whispering, guys. It detonates. In that situation of the same case, Ndondon, that was found at Kelly Kumalo's house. The state believed Ukuti, that case is going to save its case. The one thing that the state believes it's going to save in its case, the bullet casing that was found in Kelly Kumalo's home and the so-called smoking gun. It is not. But instead, of proving guilt, it has now become one of the most discredited pieces of forensic evidence in South African courtroom history. And the defense didn't merely challenge it, they obliterated it, period. You must remember that this ballistic expert report was the forensic pillar the state built its case on. You must remember that. For all these years, they were sitting on that. For this entire decade, the state pushed a simple narrative: one shooter, one gun, one case linking the accused to the crime. Do you understand what they did there? The case was supposed to be a forensic anchor, the objective scientific evidence that would silence the doubt, but the defense saw what the state ignored: a chain of custody held together by nothing. And once they pulled the thread, the entire forensic story collapsed. And the other thing that gave the defense leeway, it was Mangena's statement itself. It was Mangena's statement itself, because that was not looking good. And guess what else is the problem now when it comes to that? The law does not forgive forensic failure. It doesn't. The defense didn't invent loopholes. They relied on the law. State versus Ndlovu 2002 makes it clear: if the chain of custody is broken, the exhibit is worthless, not weak, not questionable, it is worthless. And in this case, the chain wasn't just broken, it was shattered beyond repair. It was shattered beyond repair, because there is no way Dave is going to come and say, no, it did not match. You need to have consistent markings, and there were no consistent markings. And the people that Mangena said they also checked with him, they were that's what they were doing. They Yes. So it was bad, guys. The entire situation became very bad. And then the other thing that was so shocking, it was the scene of catastrophic situation that happened there by when Mosia arrived in the crime scene. That's something that we also need to tackle on. Sergeant Mosia, the state's crime scene officer, admitted the unthinkable, right? He arrived 2 hours late. The scene was never secured. Civilians had already walked through the lounge. He had no gloves, no perimeter tape. In forensic science, this isn't a mistake. This is a catastrophic contamination. A compromised scene means compromised evidence. And compromised evidence means the court must treat every item as tainted. But it gets worse. Do you know what's worse? There was a fatal breach, SAPS Standing Order 311. Mosia made the most unforgivable forensic mistake. He bagged the bullet casing before taking photographs. This violates SAPS Standing Order 311, which requires photographs, measurements, placement, documentation before any exhibit is touched. Without pre-collective images, the state cannot prove the casing was actually there. Its position was original. It wasn't planted. It wasn't moved. It wasn't brought in later. In forensic law, no photos is equal to no evidence, period. So they can't come here and tell us other things. And when it comes to the documentation black hole, that alone is also a challenge. The defense then exposed the administrative nightmare: missing receipts, no proper exhibit register entries, sketches instead of photographs, no time-stamped proof of who handled the casing, no sealed evidence bag traceability. Under Criminal Procedure Act, Section 212, forensic evidence must be verified, trackable, accounted for at every step. Here, in the Senzo Meyiwa case, it was none of those things. This wasn't chain of custody witness. This was chain of custody suicide. And it's working for the defense. And then the defense delivered the killer shots. Do you know what they did? When the defense put all this together, one truth became unavoidable. The bullet casing cannot be relied upon for any purpose. Not to link the gun, not to link the shooter, not to link any accused. The state smoking gun has turned into smoke and nothing else. The defense didn't just weaken the state forensic case, they vaporized it, period. That's what they did. And the bottom line that we have is what? The bullet that never fired. The tragedy of this trial is that one moment of chaos in that house has now been matched by chaos in its investigation. A bullet casing that was supposed to deliver justice may now be the very reason justice become impossible. Because the law is unforgiving, a broken chain of custody kills evidence. And once that evidence dies, the case around it collapses. This is how the defense blew up the state's forensic case, not with rhetoric, not with theatrics, but with science, law, and one truth South Africa cannot ignore. You cannot convict anyone on a bullet, on a bullet that never fired. That you cannot do. So, guys, what are your thoughts when it comes to this? I want to hear you. Please, let's have a conversation on the comment section. Thank you so much. I will see you on our next video. Bye-bye.